Where is that? Okay, getting the thumbs up.
This is the revised, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yep.
All right, we're ready to roll.
Good evening, everybody. Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm going to convene the Wednesday, February 12th, budget workshop for the Board of Ed at 6 o'clock. There we are, on time. Roll call, please.
Chairman Bondi's
Here.
Vice Chair Nafrio.
Here.
Secretary Sienna. Here. Judy Gannon.
Present.
Zachary Canada.
Here.
Kim Dawson. Here. Victoria Lanza. Here.
Okay, we will salute to the flag, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I don't know if there's anyone here from the public to speak. We are going to have public comment at the end of our meeting, and it's a 2-minute limit for public input, and it's for statements, not for questions. If you do have specific questions, you can direct those to the superintendent, and you will get your answers, okay? Email. Thank you so much. Oh, email, yes. All right, superintendent's 25-26 budget and capital requests.
So you have the questions that you submitted over the last few days prior to or after the first budget workshop. So what I thought we would do is we'd start with capital tonight. John Florio's here. You can look through your question or specifically one that you asked as we go along, and then we're going to get into, after John completes the capital piece with any questions, there was a request to look at the status quo number and what that would look like with the cuts that the administrative team had recommended over the last several weeks. So if that sounds like a plan, and everyone's good with that, we'll start with capital, because that was one of the things that we mentioned at the last meeting. So John, that being said, I'm going to have you come up and sit. It's easier. I moved the administrators up because a lot of times they're not heard when they're sitting in the back, so the microphones don't pick them up. So I wanted them to be closer to the microphone so everyone can hear them as well. John is going to review last year's capital projects and update on all of those, and then speak to this next year. Some of the items have not been priced out yet, and John will go into that only because he's working with Mr. Marola from the town, and they're trying to come up with creative ways to do some town projects at the same time there's school projects being done, trying to capitalize on, shared projects. So John, without further ado, I'll let you take over capital.
Okay. So what I gave you guys back is our capital request history going back to 2021. The reason why I gave you that, you can review it. A lot of items we continue to ask for, we've been asking for since 2021. The longer things go, the worse they get, the more expensive they get to replace. So you can see here what I gave you, what was awarded what was asked for in that year, and what was awarded in that year. So 2021, you had the what was awarded, what you know, what the total was, and what was awarded, 21, 22, same thing. 22, 23. 23, 24, nothing was awarded. 24, 25. And the last page is what we're gonna go over for this year. So under 24, 25, last year, you see the request of the track reserve for the high school. The athletic storage building was put on there. The auditorium HVAC replacement was put on there, and the Jerome Harrison HVAC replacement was put on there. Initially in the budget, the HVAC replacement for the auditorium was awarded. And then the town put both units out for bid, okay, and both of those were awarded to a mechanical contractor for replacement. Jerome Harrison, Totucket Valley, the paving of the lots and driveways are still in. And if you go back to 2021, you'll see it, that's where it started. You'll see it says awarded, additional money was added to the kitty that they already had. Well, of course, it's not enough money to pay both of those. And I'll speak about pavement in a little while. The Totucket Valley gym floor was an insurance claim, so that wasn't a capital improvement. That floor was done. The STW split units, actually, they were not awarded, but Anne Marie McCarthy got a grant. And those happen to fall under that.
So that's been
And then the
completed?
upgrade-
Was that completed then? The ductless split units?
They're not totally installed yet.
Okay.
And the upgrade building management for Jerome Harrison, the auditorium, if you go back, you'll see that that's also started back in 2021. Energy management systems are worth their weight in gold. They control the building, control your heating and cooling. They save you energy costs. They save you equipment repair costs. So, like I said, we've been requesting those upgrades since 2021. They've never been approved. And if you notice the price change over the course of the year, you see how much it is now to replace those units. It would have been half the amount of money if we did it back when we first requested it. So that's the history that you have there. You can review it. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I have all the paperwork on this, on those budget years in my office. So we go to the 25, 26 capital improvement requests. I'd just like to say one thing about capital improvements and how we handle it, and I don't think we're the only school system that does it. Everybody seems to put a dollar amount on it and go, oh, that's got to be a capital improvement because it costs so much money. Capital improvements is improvements. It's not status quo. So if you have a 25-year-old building and a piece of equipment came with that building, it's an integral part of operating that building, and it fails. If you replace it with the same exact thing, that should come under our maintenance budget, not a capital improvement. Not improving anything. You're bringing the building back up to status quo, the original part of the building. If that was a heating unit and they say, hey, as long as we're changing it, why don't we add air conditioning? No, it's a capital improvement. So I think we got to start reviewing what we want to do as far as maintenance, give a projected outlook, and start putting some of those items into our maintenance budget.
Yeah.
Our maintenance budget's going to go up, but if the town questions it and say, well, our maintenance budget went up because we need to replace these aging systems, we're not going for capital because it's status quo. It's part of the building. You're not improving anything. There are things that we ask for that you're improving, sure. So we have to start handling.
Makes a lot of sense.
We have to start handling maintenance a different way. Okay? So this year you see number one, track and field improvements. we have put in for improvements of the track over the years, recoating it, repainting it, but there's been talk about a synthetic turf field. I'll put that to the superintendent, he's more involved in that than I am.
There's a question mark there. The permanent project building committee that obviously has been overseeing the high school project requested that. They had gone to a neighboring school and asked that we go out and do a site visit. So I went with Dan Salentano from the town and spoke with the group that did their track and field improvements. So in the process, we asked for 3 companies to come in and look to see what it would cost. But it's going to go through permanent project. And I think they're looking at different funding sources and ways to do it. So I don't even know if it will be a capital item, depending upon what they see with the high school project and any potential for doing anything like that. They just asked us to give them a number. We should have the 3 numbers, I would think, within the next 2 weeks, then they can do what they want with them. So we put it in there. It's been in there for years, but it's the first time that it's actually gotten some traction with the building committee, wanting to see what something like that would cost. So they'll get that.
May I ask, for those of us who aren't very savvy about synthetic turf fields, is the upkeep comparable to a grass field?
Well,
Or is there more or less?
Much less, because
Much less.
Okay.
you don't have any chemicals in the paint.
Okay,
You can play on it year round, you can rent it out in the evenings for a variety of things, because we're fortunate to get lights there.
right.
So it is potentially income bearing because of that. You can play in bad weather, you can plow it, you can,
It's safer for the app.
it's come a long way.
Keeping grass fields are very expensive.
I
mean,
thought that, but I
between the
wasn't-
maintenance, the seeding, the fertilizing, the irrigation, the water cost for irrigation, the field paint is
Astronomical.
astronomical right now.
I have a question too. Does that fade? I don't know.
It gets painted for every game.
Are you talking about the turf
The
field?
turf.
No,
Oh, the turf stays.
It does.
For 20 years.
Yeah.
And you'll redo
20
just
years.
the carpet. So it's about 20-year lifespan.
Yeah,
Um,
and the turf fields get stripes for every sport.
Right.
So any sport could play on it at any time.
And the athletes can slide versus kind of when you hit the ground on a grass, more injury. I have a question though, is there like the little rubber things in
There's
that?
2 different
They're two
products
different styles.
we're working out.
Yeah.
One of them has the rubber sand,
Yeah.
the other one just has sand.
Yeah.
So
Because there was a lot of talk about the rubber being
cancer
an issue, yeah.
and we've done all that research, and it's gotten better. They used to grind tires and use tires in the past.
Yeah.
They've gone away from that, from the carcinogens that we know when you have a 90-degree day. And there's been a lot of studies with females that were goalies that were, on the turf a lot in hot weather and cancer causing. But we have one that is sand only with a pad underneath it, so a very different look, and it's much better now. It's not as compacted as it was before, so it's safer for athletes as well.
Actually looks like grass now.
Yeah,
It
it's grass.
doesn't look like indoor-outdoor carpet anymore. It actually looks like grass.
So again, that's going to go through the permanent project and we're going to let them handle all of that with potential funding sources.
Okay.
We just wanted to bring it to your attention. So a bunch of these are paving situations that are long overdue. The principals I know they'll nod their heads that, there's potholes everywhere. I know behind Jerome, we have cones around one, and over time, you get sinkholes and they drop, the weather changes, they heave, they shift, and then they get plowed, and we tear it out, and it's long overdue. So Franny's trying to work in concert with John, that if they're doing a paving job, they could then potentially have overlap with getting the parking lot done, and try to be cost effective doing that. So those are the biggies. We're going to finish up the.
Yep. So you see number 2, sidewalk replacement. The sidewalks at the intermediate school are in need of replacing. The project that's going on, the roofing and masonry project that's going on, did include some part of the sidewalk, but only 4 feet out from the doors. Permanent project didn't like that idea, just coming out 4 feet when all the rest of the sidewalk needs to be replaced anyway. So they took a credit back for the 4 feet out from the doors, and we've been in conversation with Public Works, and we don't have a price yet as far as the square footage of how much sidewalk we're actually gonna have to replace there, but it looks like 90% of the sidewalk around the intermediate school needs to be done. So we could get a cost on that for you as soon as we can, okay?
So they take a beating with the salt, you know, when we get days like this morning and tomorrow morning. They're constantly,
So my understanding is that we need to have prices on the projects before we can
yeah.
pass them and put them into capital
Yep,
plan.
we could get that one. We'll get that one into there.
Until
So.
February 28th.
Okay.
The Totucket Valley has two. One I put in there, gym HVAC replacement. Totucket Valley just has 2 old hung blower units in there that are heat only in the gymnasium. We just replaced a $350,000 gym floor. That gym gets quite humid and it would be nice to improve the heating and add air conditioning. So we do have area for a rooftop unit behind the gym on the flat roof. So we would remove the 2 units that are there and install a rooftop unit that's both heating and air conditioning. I think that's kind of an important
Would that be protecting the new floor as
thing to
well?
look at.
So would that be protection for the new floor?
Yeah, because air conditioning also has humidity
Right.
that they take out of the building. So Judy knows what that, what that
Yes, I do.
gymnasium is like in the late spring or, fall, and during the whole summer. Pavement, again, here it is at Totucket Valley again. Like I said, it started in 2021. Jerome Harrison, again, pavement. As the superintendent mentioned, there's more undermining at Jerome Harrison. There's a huge pothole in the back now, undermined under one of the catch basins, which we have to address. It just keeps happening at Jerome. Jerome Harrison's going on 26 years old now. That's original paving. Energy management systems, again, came up. The one at Jerome Harrison now is defunct. We cannot get parts to operate it anymore, so everything over there is operating manually. So we're not saving much energy there. The auditorium energy management system again, and the lobby floor again, once again, is on there, and that's been on there for quite a while.
So John, can you get that sidewalk?
I can get the sidewalk quote. We'll address that tomorrow. As far as the paving, the Public Works Director, I have conversations with Franny every day about all kind of projects. And because the Public Works is in charge of paving in the town, they pave the roads, they pave anything that has to do with town property, schools are town property. Public Works Director feels that he should be, handling the paving, and he also, he'd like to have Tilcon do the job. If you get Tilcon to come and do the job, they charge you for moving their equipment to your job and away from your job. There's an additional cost. Director Barola says if the town decides to do road paving and Tilcon gets a job, he'd like to put the schools in. Seeing Tilcon's already in town, they don't charge you if they're in town for moving their equipment from site to site. So if they go from road to road to road, it's okay, they're already in town, they don't have to bring the equipment. So if they came to do the schools, they would just bring it to the school, they would charge you. He also suggested, quite possibly, he could talk to the town, if the town's gonna bond out the streets, possibly throw the 2 schools in under the same bond. So that's something Director Marola could discuss with the town. Franny he's the best at what he does. So maybe quite possibly we could get the schools done that way.
I have a question. These numbers here, how do you come up with these numbers?
As far as the
The capital budget, so like the
So
gym,
the energy management system, I contact the company that does our energy management right now in the high school and the intermediate school. So they gave me the price for upgrading. That's the system we want to go to, that's our system. So if we were to upgrade Jerome Harrison or the auditorium, it would be ABS, it would be that system, because that is our town, that is our system.
Okay.
So he gave me, like, their salesman came out, looked at what we had and gave me the prices. Same thing for the HVAC, I contact 3, 4, sometimes 5 and 6 area HVAC companies, tell them what I want to do, they come and walk the site, they take a look at it, and they say, John, it's gonna cost this much money. That's that price that I got, it's about the price that everybody said, yeah, it's gonna run you about $250,000.
okay, so you kind of just like go.
That's how we come up with to let you know what things are gonna cost. If you say you're gonna do a project, we'll get a definite price, this is exactly what it's gonna be. Put stuff out to bid, this is exactly what it's gonna cost. That's the ballpark. And the ballpark usually fits right in there. They know what they're talking about. If they come out and they say it's $250,000, it'll be $249,000.
And these are in order of importance? Am I reading that
No.
correctly? Okay, because it
No.
says 1, 2, 3. I just.
No,
Okay.
they're just on there how I
These
put
are all
them
the
on.
things we need.
They're just on there as I
Okay.
put them on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was there some paving done at Jerome?
There was some paving done in the back to widen out, because the parents are now coming down Merrick, around the back, spinning back around, coming back out Merrick, and it was oh my God. So we had teachers parked back there, we had people trying to turn around, so Public Works with the direction of the superintendent took a grass strip out and widened that, put some pavement in there, so now the parents can pass each other without somebody getting in an accident.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty back there.
Yeah.
And then in the front, wasn't there something in the front?
It was one lane,
PTA.
two cars.
Picked up the cost.
Oh, yeah, that was a PTA.
And add that to the back.
They wanted to pave that little area so the kids could play on it.
Yes.
That was the PTA
Okay,
paid for that.
okay,
Yep.
all right.
They're also looking to do rubber chips under the.
Yeah.
Under the playground, okay.
PTO is looking
Yep.
at that as well,
Okay.
or assisting.
Thank you to the PTO, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any other questions? Okay,
thank you, John. Thank you,
thank
John.
you.
So the next request came for the breakdown of status quo and what that would look like if we were just to carry this current year over, the difference in where those areas were. So Mark, if you want to start with your handouts so that everyone.
Yeah, so I gave you the line by line. You should remember this from last year. It identifies the 24-25 budget, which is the current budget for this year, the amount that we requested in the 25-26 proposed, and then way over to the right in a pink-headed column, there's the status quo. I tried to color coordinate the status quo column this year to help make it easier for you. So blue identifies anything that is contractual, salary, a benefit, utility, those things that we really can't do much about. Pink means that it's reduced, status quo number has been reduced to reflect what we currently have for this year. And if it's in a light orange, that means in the proposed budget for next year, we're actually asking for less than what we currently have. So it would be a reduction to our status.
So can you explain that? Because I know one of the questions in the packet is specific to that. It's to the retirements and then hiring the masters for.
Okay, so take the very first, that wasn't what I was referring to, but it's a good example. The very first line you'll see there is certified staff for Jerome. You'll see a reduction there of $65,000. There is no one being eliminated or no position being eliminated. So that reduction is a result of, we know of 2 retirees that we will have at the end of this year. And so when we budget for those replacement teachers, we budget at a master's 4. We try and go, you know, not too high, but not right out of school kind of thing, kind of go in the middle. So when you take out salaries for very experienced teachers at the top of the salary scale and replace them with a master's 4, it's about a $30,000 savings for each of them. And so you add those 2 things up, and that's where your savings.
So it's a guesstimate, it's our best guesstimate.
It's a
We
guesstimate.
could end up with one that's a master's 8, we could end up with a brand new one out of school.
Absolutely, absolutely. You could have, you know, someone go out on leave or someone resign between now and then, and it's all up for grabs.
But we know of 2 definite retirements
So
in Juneau.
the ones that we know, we make those adjustments for. So I'll let you look down the 22 pages. And if there's
So
any questions.
there's no personnel cuts. I'm going to say this. There's no personnel cuts in this packet getting us from 8.2,
06.
okay, down to 6.12. All right, so you're going to look at each percentage point being a little over $300,000. So going from 8.2 down to the 6.12, over $600,000 of cuts. But there's no personnel cut at this point, getting to 6%. Does that make sense?
And remember, there's no additions either. When you
Right.
look at those paraprofessional lines, you're going to see increases. And if you recall from our last few meetings, we've explained that, you know, through the reduction of our ESSER grant, that those paraprofessionals are now being returned to the general fund. So those increases there represent the staff that we have. It's just the different funding.
But doesn't this, maybe I'm reading this wrong, the impact on building subs and paras, we
So
see a reduction in those though, correct?
Right, and that's why you'll see notations in red. I tried to outline the possible impacts, and of course, the administrators can elaborate much better than I on curriculum-related lines, but the substitute lines really don't represent one employee. We budget for, you know, one, so right now the long-term subline is for, the amount of dollars represents one long-term sub for the entire year. But that is not sum one, it's just the total funds that represent someone coming in. Because that actually could be 4 people. If you had 4 teachers out at a school during the entire year, you could have 4 different long-term subs at any one time. But we budget for one long-term sub for the entire year. Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So how do we get the proposed reduction? Like, how do we get to a reduction?
So basically, what this represents is just what would need to be cut or what was added from what we currently have to our proposed. And then I took it and just knocked it back down where I could to what we currently have.
Okay.
There's no, because that's what status quo is. It's leaving in place exactly what you have now. And so there could be, you know, positive things from that, or there could be negative implications from that.
And as we said in the last meeting, the driving forces in this budget are the insurance and then contractual obligations for the 7 bargaining units. So I did bring a one-paper copy of each of the 7 bargaining units. I can't remember who asked that question.
I did. I found them online, though.
Yes, they are all
They're all
available
online.
on our website.
Do you want paper?
No, I'm sorry, I did,
Humor me and say yes, so.
yeah, I'll take them.
So here's the step, but they are online.
Okay.
Martha?
Yes.
On page 5, 2610, next to custodian overtime, your impact is what's for para funding. So should that be what's listed for 2610 further down?
What line are you on, Beth?
What page?
Page 5.
Page
You said
5.
2610?
2610, if you look at the impact statement, that's what was for the paras up above, and I'm wondering if it should be what was below for the other custodians.
Because it's custodian, not paras.
It might have just been a cut and
Like,
paste.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
just-
it's just a cut and paste.
So should it be what was under?
So just take the word para out and substitute custodian.
Okay, well, I'm looking at, like, for 306, you have funds will need to be taken from other lines, so should that be put up there for the custodians?
Well, so in any of these places where there is let's just say for this year, if we run into a situation where we're over budget in a line, we have to take funds from another line, which in actuality results in something else getting cut. So it's the same in this. If something comes up unexpected next year and we don't have the budget for it, but it has to be done, then we're taking those monies from somewhere else, and then something else is going to suffer. So it's, yeah.
So the overtime, I know that was one of the questions too that came in, and I'll let Martha explain why it got to be as high as it was. Now, we've put something in place moving forward from here by shifting a split custodian into a building where there was a custodian getting quite a bit of overtime for a person that was out for medical long term. And I'll tell you, it's really difficult finding substitutes. Like, we struggled, we put it out there, and we thought we had some interest, and we ended up moving the person that's here back to the building for that night shift. And then we're just trying to figure out our building here. And that was the lion's share. I don't want to go into the details
Yeah,
about the
that's it.
overtime.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is also page 5, object 210, health insurance.
Yes.
So you're showing an $832,846 change from 24-25 to 25-26. Can you show me where the savings is being seen of, because we paid for, in June, we paid $391,302 early, we paid an early premium in June of 23-24 out of that budget.
Yeah, so the budget for 24-25 was reduced. So the budget for the current year actually only represents 11 months rather than 12.
Okay.
So the proposed budget for 25-26 represents 12 months again. So that is part of the reason why that increase is 800,000 plus.
Okay.
And then the difference between the 11 and 12 months is your 9% estimated increase because of health cost trends.
So it's 391,000 a month?
Approximately
for
give or take
premiums.
who's on the insurance at any one point.
And that's the Board of Ed's cost, not including the contribution from employees?
That is so we list it out separately there so you could see exactly how much we anticipate receiving from employees, from retirees, what we pay for dental, what we pay for vision insurance. They're all listed there separately.
Okay.
And the Board of Ed pays for everybody up front.
Right.
So that's why that line represents all of the medical costs. And then as those contributions come in from employees and from retirees, you remember back to our monthly reports, we post those payments to those lines, and you see the negative numbers, which are actually credits.
Right, okay. So all right, so that number, the 25-26 number is 11 months. Yes.
The 25, 26 number.
Oh, I'm sorry, the
is 12
24,
months.
25 is
Right,
the 11.
Is 12 months.
Is the 11
And
months.
the current
Okay.
year, 24, 25,
Okay.
is 11
Is
months.
11. Okay,
Yes.
got it.
The status quo budget, what is the percentage increase?
6.122.
1.2.
And if you turn to the very last page, you'll see our proposed versus the status quo dollar change and percentage. That's okay.
I'd like to ask about substitutes, please.
Yeah.
I'm in page 4 and 5.
Okay.
And I remember that at our previous meeting, the administrators stated that the number of building subs they had were adequate to cover when people were out. But I also noticed that on page 5, we have categories for substitute teachers for each school for 2,500. And in this year's budget, it was there, but we haven't spent any of that money. So I guess I'm just questioning, is that really a necessary expense? And
So
when would
that
that be used?
$2,500 is there as money for like a daily sub for if there's ever a time where one of our administrators needs to call in somebody through our frontline attendance system
Right.
and our automatic calling.
Are we
is
even
able
using
to
that anymore? I'm sorry to interrupt.
It's there, but I believe most of our subs are covered through, most of our positions are covered through our building subs. Am I accurate with that?
We have two daily substitutes that are on as needed, so
Okay.
they fall within that.
So they haven't been
Online
used this year at
process.
all because there's no expenditures here?
Yeah.
You have used them?
It might be under district and not specifically
Building?
the location, the building.
Okay, but should it be in the building if it was specific to TBS?
We will know if that same substitute that's working at Tutucket then goes maybe to Jerome the next day, we're going to get one timesheet for that individual. We're not
I
going to
understand
know.
that. Okay, yep, that makes sense. It just seems like a lot of money to have in there that maybe could be used somewhere else. That's my only reason for asking.
Another question on substitutes.
Yeah.
24, 25, it was 308,670, and the proposed budget, it's 695,632, an increase of 386,000.
I'm sorry, what are you looking at?
I'm sorry, this is, okay, sorry. This is the
Oh, you're in the,
proposed budget,
The proposed.
salary increase by affiliation. Salary increase by
What page is it?
affiliation, it's page 14,
well,
substitute
no,
salary.
because that's a cumulative total.
Yes. So it's, 125% increase.
Right, but that's probably, I don't have my, hang on a second, I don't see what you're looking at.
Didn't that also include the custodial overtime that we were? Or no, oh, it wasn't.
This was the budget, the first budget packet that was given to us at our June 23rd meeting, January 23rd meeting. Excuse me, wrong date.
Says increase to reflect
So
actual.
those are all substitute salaries. So that's your long-term sub, your building sub, your daily sub, your nurse substitutes, clerical, custodian, any substitute we have in the district, not just teaching.
Okay, but it's still 125% increase. What does that do to? Do you have a justification for it?
So that would be, again, back to all of our monthly reports that we go over. When I say there's all of the costs for our Gale students who are working as our substitute paraprofessionals because we can't fill those positions. That's part of the reason why substitutes for absences for all levels, custodial, teacher, paras. We have any one group has employees that is out for, any number of reasons.
I understand that, but it's still 125% increase. What is the cause of that level of increase? I expect an increase.
People are out.
Okay, so are we just guessing there's going to be?
No, all those numbers are based off of actual. That's why,
It's in this one. You want to find it in here?
no, I haven't.
Oh, you got it.
All of the numbers that we propose are based on actual expenditures from last year and year-to-date.
Okay,
They're actual numbers, even though it's up 125%.
I
I
know.
mean, we really have no control over how often, people are out. They have,
Yeah.
sick days to take or whatever.
That's right.
So that, I think, is always going to be a difficult number for us
Right, but I
to-
would think it would be somewhat constant, somewhat every year, X amount of hours need to be covered.
No, I get that, yeah.
So it's a spike, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's 100% plus 28, so it's like a 28%. You know what I'm saying? Is that how we're rating it correctly?
Well, the cost is doubling, more than doubling.
I don't think the cost is doubling in actuality, I think it's doubling on its paper. I think the cost has always been
You're right, you're right.
And now
Because
this is showing our actual.
Our actual costs have been that.
Okay, so we've been
We
taking
have
from
not
other
budgeted.
lines to cover that in the previous years? Okay, okay.
I have one question on page 6 of our status quo.
Yeah.
Where we talk about our severance payment. Legally, if we have more than 2 retirees, if we have 5 next year, are we allowed to defer paying them, or do their contracts state?
It
they have to pay them?
depends when the person gives us notice. We've tried to get some language into the teacher's contract that says if you let us know by December that you're going to retire in June, then we will be able to budget for that and pay you in July of the following year. If you let us know in April of that year that you're retiring in June,
Not guaranteed.
we may not be able to pay you until the following, fiscal year after that, because we need to be able to budget for it.
So that's in new contracts, not in already existing.
Well, it's in the contracts now. I mean, if we have the funds available, we will certainly pay, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay, so where do we go from here? Anybody have any more questions? I mean, it's a 22-page, document that we just got received, so it's hard to get questions.
I would like to ask about the late bus. I think in the paper that we got, it said the late bus was being removed in the status quo. Is that
Yeah, for
something
next
that?
year.
Is that
It's
something?
out of here.
I just couldn't find it in here
Yeah,
right
it's-
now.
It's a reduction
But it's
of
under,
36,000.
if you look under object 510,
510, thank
you'll
you.
find it there.
So that's a reduction of 36,000.
Because we did take that out and then had to put it back in because
Yeah.
of some pushback for parents that needed it.
Well,
I just wondered if,
I think we're in a different situation, and we're going to have to make that work this year, next year. I don't think we're going to have that luxury of offering the late bus, and I think it's going to have to be removed. I mean, it's removed in this part.
Right.
At 6.12.
yes.
The next, if there's going to be another reduction, then the administrative team is going to have a lot of, obviously, difficult conversations.
I know that the late bus is used for sports, not for school clubs. Is it also used for kids who need extra help?
Yes, it's a variety. So any student has access to the late bus, 2 buses that come through and run. So it's not specific for anything. It's anyone who's staying for extra help, clubs, activities, and chime in. We ask the administrators to move up so that they can be actively involved and be heard.
For the middle school, it's imperative. We have, today alone, kids staying after who, on a half day, who don't have the late bus, and it was chaos at the end of the day. because parents couldn't get there on time, who stayed. Luckily, we had this meeting, so I was there until 6 o'clock. But because there was no wait list on this one day, and it's well known that there's not, we had a lot of issues.
How many students on average would you say jump on the late bus?
So especially right now during play season and with sports, I'd say probably 50.
40 to 50 kids a day.
Wow.
What about high school? Do you try, I know it runs over to the middle school, so you don't see it.
It's not as many, of course, because kids have licenses and friends can buy, depending on how long they have the license.
Right.
We definitely have some though that come over and meet with our
I'd say
kids.
it's no more than 20, but it's more than a handful.
Right. It's bigger, obviously, for the middle school.
So we have 2 buses and we're removing 1, or we have 1 and we're removing for none?
Are 2 that's coming through?
There are 2, and one for each end.
Okay, so
So like 18,000.
we would still have a mode of transportation. I thought there was only 1 bus. So your ride might,
It's completely covered. We won't have any buses.
you'll have none.
36,000 is 2 buses.
There's 2 buses.
So like if we don't have late buses, students that don't have the luxury of having a parent come pick them up wouldn't be able to participate in any of the extracurriculars.
I guess that's why I'm asking about the
Right,
cut.
so it wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't
People
happen.
couldn't do it.
Right, do you think we'd see a significant
Yes.
decrease?
Yes.
I do, given the number of students that take the late bus after school.
And I think it builds a divide even larger that already exists.
And we experienced that in the fall initially.
We did.
When there was no late bus this year. Again,
Yeah, a couple weeks, we lived 3 weeks.
And since COVID, we have really been rebuilding that after-school culture of getting students to stay after, and so that would bring us back. That's where we were looking for. It's taken some time.
With my parent hat on for a moment, my daughter personally takes that late bus for the gazillion things she does, and she wouldn't be able to do a single one without it, because I work a traditional schedule, and it would be very unfortunate.
Okay.
So where are we at?
Also, is this, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
the status quo, are we removing transportation for athletics as well? For like away games?
No, the only bus that can decrease is this after-school bus for activities. So our sports programs, we have not removed any transportation for unified sports, for CIC sports, middle school. This is just the 36,000 after-school activity bus. That's it.
So they still go to other schools and have their
Yeah,
meets
so if
and matches?
like our teams are playing tonight, then the bus picks them up and takes them. The middle school played today after school, and the bus ran them up to TBS and the other team. So it's only for those situations where we have, practice middle school kids, or they have extra help, or they have a play practice, they get out, they hop on a bus at 4.
For what?
The late bus.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock. So then 4 o'clock, the 2 buses run.
But what I'm hearing is our administrators at the intermediate school are saying that bus is imperative for you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that, I think that's something we're going to have to look at and see what we can do. Because if you're going to offer after-school enrichment and sports and things of that nature, and you have a whole population that can't participate because they can't get home, then it doesn't make sense to have one without the other. I guess that's where I stand on that. So I would request that we look at that again.
I would support that.
Yeah, strongly.
I'm on page 12, regarding transportation, more on that. 500 series, give or take, I don't know where it is, but looking at 510, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess the question doesn't matter what the item is or object number is, but pre-K, which one is that built into? Is that captured in 510, or is it captured in another line?
So
The
pre-K would be
busing.
part of our regular transportation, and whether or not that transportation was for special education or for regular,
Okay.
regular transportation. I guess we need to know the specific
No, I
student
guess-
in order to,
I'm just looking at the increase change, it's 367. But is that a contractual increase?
360.
Or is that an increase because we're adding
So
more
the
kids to
student
buses because
that-
of pre-K?
No, that transportation line Also, the current year has been reduced. The 24-25 budget has been reduced because we did a prepayment in June of last year in order to get the 1% discount.
I see.
Was that for the diesel? Was that?
No, it was just for the
Transportation.
the transportation.
Okay.
So it's really not going up that much?
No.
It's just because we have a 4-year contract or a
Five-year contract.
So it's not going up that much, it's just that we paid a chunk in advance.
The contractual increase is 4%.
So do you anticipate that happening again this year? Another pay in advance?
We don't have any money.
Well, if we don't
We have
have
$5.
surplus.
Well, no, that's not what
We
I'm
could
saying.
pay $5.
So they're asking us for, this line, right, for 1.7. That includes,
Well, if you notice, I left the proposed number in the status quo column because we can't cut that back.
I didn't, okay.
We need that
That threw me
for,
off. Yeah,
yeah, that's why it's in the
Disregard.
blue.
All right. Anybody else? Questions specific to what we were given this evening or that you've been thinking about since our last workshop budget? I would like to bring up, it's a question actually for Sarah. If we're using the Office of Early Childhood sliding scale, can we put a cap on the highest amount of the, okay. So I would like to propose a cap. And of course, that will, be revisited year by year, but since that captures the highest amount that's currently being paid, I would like to,
Well, we haven't proposed a tuition schedule that would have to be a policy that we would put into place. As shared at our meeting last week, the proposal is simply a tuition-based preschool program. The specific tuition plan that we would be proposing, including things like cap and payments and things like that, would go through policy development. So in terms of the cap and where we would find the cap, I think I shared in the meeting last week that those districts that do have a cap are based on the cost of the program. They're not based on a person's individual income. If we were to do that, and I did go through and I estimated the cost of our preschool program, our cap would be about $10,000. That's an underestimate because what we're not including is we're not including benefits and some of those other things like insurance. We're not looking at, because when the OEC talks about the cost of care, they're also going into all of the logistical and facilities as well. And so we just looked at the salary of the paraprofessionals, the salary of the teachers, as well as transportation. So if we were to do a cap, and again, I know we're not voting on that today, but I would think that would be a factor that we would want to at least consider, because again, it is, just in terms of setting precedent and being consistent with the process, but I think all of those details, I think can certainly be something that's ironed out once the policy's developed.
And how will that come back to us then?
In terms of
knowing what the plan is or what the policy
well,
is?
the policy would have to be
Written
worked out by
policy?
the board. Absolutely. And we haven't engaged our attorneys in the development of a policy because we haven't agreed with a tuition-based program.
Come to that point, okay.
I also think there's some misunderstandings going on out there. I actually had somebody in the last 2 days that I know personally say something to me, and it's the no cap thing that's bothering me. And I'm like, but I don't think you're understanding this, and I don't think you're reading it correctly. And she told me what she thought her payment was going to be. And I said, you are so far off base, it's not even funny. And she was using the wrong column in that OEC sliding scale. And, I figured it for her, and she's like, oh, I didn't even apply yet because I thought it was way out of reach for me. Boy, I figured that wrong. She was using the very first column that showed 11% on that sliding scale. And when I showed her which column, she goes, oh, 6%. And then she's like, that's what most people pay for daycare anyways. And she's like, oh, that's a whole different thing. And that happened happened to two people. They were misreading it.
And we did provide some clarification in the frequently asked questions that was emailed out to all attendees, and we also posted it on the website, so, and shared it last week. So I think, certainly it's not an easy document to follow.
Right.
And we've tried to provide as much clarity as possible, but, I agree. I think that what we're asking of families is commensurate with what's being provided. And as I said last week, it might not be for everybody. But, certainly if the board decides that the cap is the way to go, then, obviously I think there should be a conversation around how that cap is determined. I don't know if we should necessarily take the one individual who might be in the program now and their highest payment, because again, that was a snapshot in time of one individual that came into the program. The number of Smart Start slots available who have to qualify based on the grant can change. So we are allowed to what's called double dip, meaning a student who's identified as having special education needs, who happens to meet the requirements of Smart Start, we can provide them as one of the students that we're accepting it and have to accept 30. When we do that, it increases the number of families that can be pulled from the general lottery. If we don't have a lot of families whose students we can double dip on, the number of general lottery slots that we're looking at is going to be close to zero, because we cap at 15 per classroom, and I have to leave room for students with disabilities. So when we're talking about the cap and how many people it's going to impact, on a given year, it could be zero. So I just think there's a lot of information, and I certainly understand people's concerns, but I think those are details that we would need to iron out once the board determines, yes, we're moving forward with this as a tuition-based program.
Question, sorry, I missed. I asked it last week, but the division on the board there, it was by 52 weeks to get a number, right? Whatever scenario that was. And then we multiply that by 36 to get the total. Why is it not divided by 36? How does the payment fit?
Well, that's the direction of the OEC in order to determine what the weekly payment would be, and then simply multiplying it by the number of weeks that we're in school.
Okay.
Oh, because OEC doesn't basically do it on a school. OEC basically does it on a 52-week childcare. So that number that you're coming out with is 52 weeks.
Fair enough.
Preschool's only going to pay for 36.2 or something like that, 36.2. And I did it for somebody at 200, that they make $225,000, a family of 4 would be paying like $250 something a month. A week. And their child is in daycare and paying more than that at a daycare center already. But, oh, that's actually less for me.
And then for the Smart Start grant, say they expire or sunset and they're no longer available, are we mandated to hold the same ratios?
I would push for the same ratios.
Are we held by the state or anybody if we keep
report
those
our numbers to the state. So if we fell below the 50-50 and that number was reported to the state, we would be, like I said last week, we're impacted on the percentage of students who spend time with non-disabled peers. Knowing the number of students we have in our preschool classrooms, that would be a significant impact, and we likely wouldn't meet the markers. If you don't meet, so I'll go a little bit deeper on that. So we have specific areas that are highlighted every year. We're notified that year, we're going to talk about disproportionality between students who are identified as, male and female students identified as having ADHD. Is there a disproportionate value? We report our numbers on that. If we don't meet our numbers, we get a corrective action. So in a given year, if they determine the percentage of time with non-disabled peers is going to be our focus area, and we report our numbers, and our numbers indicate that we're not hitting that mark, we then have a corrective action. And corrective actions aren't for single years, they're for multiple years over time. We have not hit that, or I don't think we've hit that. I don't think that we've had a corrective action here in probably 8 or 9 years, from my records at least. So we're still responsible for those numbers.
So regardless if a Smart Start exists or not, all that still applies for pre-K?
Meaning the number of special education students to general education students?
Correct.
That has nothing to do with Smart Start.
It has nothing to do with
Nothing.
Smart Start. So
That has to do with the state
if
of
we
Connecticut.
want to offer pre-K, we have to follow this and this requirement.
I would 100% fight for that.
Well, no, hold on. Yes, and I would too, but I want to make sure, if we offer pre-K, we're mandated to follow those mandates.
There's no mandate. If North Branford Public Schools decided they're going to have a self-contained special education preschool program, then that's the decision of North Branford.
Fair enough.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that. And again, when we report our numbers, it impacts us, but there's no requirement of that. And based on the fact that in our K through 22 programs, depending on the needs of the students, some of our students aren't able to meet that mark, but because all of the rest of the population are, it keeps our numbers where they need to be. At the end of the day, we're doing what's in the best interest of kids. So while I report on these numbers, it's not something I track on a daily or even monthly basis. When we do what's right for kids, the numbers line up the way that they should.
I'm looking at scenario 3, you briefed last week, when all the money dissipates.
Well, all the
And
money
then the Board of Ed is
dissipates.
responsible for $500,000.
Well, that's where we would shift.
That's what concerns me.
100%, and that's where we would shift away from, okay, we're no longer, like my proposal would be, we're no longer bound by the Smart Start requirement of having to have it be below the standard median income. Therefore, like districts who don't get Smart Start, they have a flat tuition. Unfortunately, what that does is it takes away opportunities for some of our lower income families. And so as a district, we would have to make decisions around, do we have a flat fee, and then we might have a sliding scale for some families if they qualify, but I don't think it's an all is lost scenario. I think as a district, prioritizing early childhood education is important, and it's not just going to impact our pre-K students, it's going to impact students all the way through high school. The research on early childhood for kids with dropout rates and moving on to college, it's all positive, there's nothing negative from it. So I wouldn't say all is lost and the board is responsible for $500,000. I would say we have to come back to the table and talk about what that step is to be able to keep the preschool program as it is.
No, it's the rest of the, if there's a grant change, if you could.
Well, we meet every year. I don't think it's likely that we're going to lose both. I think we could potentially lose one, Smart Start for Recovery, in which case our number of slots drops from 30 to 15. But our tuition would look a little bit different anyways based on the sliding fee scales.
Right.
But Zach, I don't want to cut you, but the 5th, Lamont came out with his budget plan for the next 2 years. I don't know if you saw
Is that in the packet or not?
No, this one, I just pulled this today. He's looking to inject $300 million to expand pre-K, universal pre-K. His proposal is universal preschool endowment proposal to create free pre-K spaces by 2032 for families earning up to $100,000. So this is something he's earmarking some of his excess budget money towards. So we'll see how this plays out. Right. I just pulled this today, so.
What was the year until?
Up to 32. He's, in the next 2 budget cycles, he's looking to use that surplus money to inject into early pre-K. He's doing a lot to try to offset child care costs. So who knows? Stay tuned.
Okay, so even if we were interested in finding a cap, it's not something we could do tonight.
No, we'd have to wait for the policy is what I heard.
Right. But it won't impact, I mean, that's, the first decision is what you want to do as a board.
Right.
And then determine, are we going to cap with a flexible payment scale? Those are all things that we can tweak. That's not
Okay.
Those aren't deal breakers.
So do we need to vote on the proposed budget, the status quo budget?
No, you need to give me a number. So you need to determine what number you're
Are you guys ready to do that?
I have something that I want to just say. So we're in a unique situation this year in that the audit hasn't been completed, so we don't know where we are from last year. We think we have a certain number. Other people think we have a different number. So without that information, it's difficult to move forward, number one. Number two, looking at our proposed budget at 616 for the status quo, we're in line with a lot of towns around us.
Yes.
So Guilford 6.53, Branford 6.8, they're meeting tonight to talk more about it.
Right.
North Haven 6.99, Clinton 6.10. And there's a few other towns that are still yet to meet. So for myself, I would say I would be comfortable, and this is just my opinion, moving forward with the status quo budget with the understanding that if we need to make cuts again, that we would come back and vote on a final budget, if that makes sense.
We're going to have to do that.
Once the additional cuts are made.
Just putting it right out there.
I know. However, what I...
And I totally respect what you're saying, that with the status quo, and you know how the process
I do.
works. It goes back, there's going to be a vote, there's going to be a council that's going to approve or not. And so the next part of the process will be more involved with more scenarios.
Correct.
If we get this amount, this percentage, what would it look like? And that's the work of the administrative team, where they're going to have to sit down and...
No, I understand that.
And
Yep.
so
I just wanted to come back to us so that
Sure.
we can say, okay, I just wanted, like tonight, we were able to ask a couple of questions and
Now,
and
you have
get that
10 pages of
clarification.
questions that you haven't even gone through.
Well,
So then
I have to
you're gonna
read
go
them
through
again, yes.
Yeah.
I'll read them, but
And
I have one.
unfortunately, we're the lion's share of the town budget. We are. We're the biggest employer, and when other departments are asking for 5% or 6%, the dollar amount isn't anywhere near what our 6% is, unfortunately.
Well,
But
it's
it
the
is-
perfect storm.
It is what it is.
But I also think it's important to remember that there is a grant that we get from the state, the education
sharing.
cost sharing
Yeah.
grant.
Yeah.
And I reached out to find out what the number would be for this year. And it's preliminarily, but the guy said it's pretty close. $7,077,214.
Right.
So when you look at our budget, and we need to be clear about this, the tax impact from our budget is less than what we're asking for. Because what we're going to be funded for, $7 million is going to come in earmarked for our monies. So when you look at a $35 million budget, you have to, in a way, remove that $7 million.
20%.
Tax impact to the taxpayers will not be our full budgeted amount because part of that is being funded from the state. And in addition to that, the excess cost grant and the grants that we've worked on, I know there's a lot of kind of different thinking about grants, but I think that you take the money when you can get it, and then you have to make the difficult decisions when those sunset.
You either continue on with what you did or you...
But I think that we've, as a board, I think that we've been wise, and I thank our administrative team and the central office team for seeking out that money, because we just don't have it. And I think that knowing when you go into a grant that you're going to get this money and that you will not always have this money.
Right.
And at that point, you have to make those tough choices. And I think the last thing I want to say that as we move forward, it's very important to me, and I don't know how others feel, I would really love to hear what you have to say, that our cuts are not made, and I'm going to say the word easily, but I think you know that I don't mean easily. Just go to staff and start cutting. There are still many things in this budget that, in my opinion, could be cut before we go right to staff and start slashing classroom teachers. So I'm not going to have a say in that right now, but I'm just going to put that out there, that I feel that our, all the cuts are going to be difficult. The ones you've made already hurt.
Yeah.
It's not like anything is easy.
I want to bring
But I
back
really
one
want to
bus.
preserve
Late bus.
But we said right from the get-go, our highest priority is class sizes and programs
Correct.
with teachers.
Yep, and I just want to reiterate that.
front.
It's also
That's
important to
and
me.
the administrative team will say the same thing. There's just going to be head nodding. You've worked so hard as a board to build and have what you have. We didn't have full-day kindergarten several years
Right.
ago. And now you're talking about full-day pre and K, getting kids really ready. That's exciting. For 15 years, we've talked about a new high school, and we've been able to construct a $74 million state-of-the-art with programs in it that we're so proud of for a district of 500 students in the high school. There's a lot, and I've said it before, when you look at opportunities for our students, regular ed and our pre-K through age 22, we're a model for a lot of communities. And these are hard decisions, and we're all going through it. You mentioned some other towns, there's other towns that are higher than we are. And they're in the same perfect storm.
Correct.
It's the triangle that happened after, all of the funding that was eliminated after COVID, and now everyone's trying to deal with higher expenses.
Every single town,
Everything.
it's not only ESSER grants, it's the
Right,
increased
especially
power
labor
costs,
costs,
it's the
everything.
health benefits, which are, basically out of control. I mean, East Haven's asking for 16.6.
Yeah, I spoke with her, I know.
I was like 16.6, and they increased it from what they had to that. But I was dumbfounded because it sounded like exactly what we've all been saying, every single town. It wasn't like just one or two, it's everybody is in exactly the same boat, so.
Can I just add
Not that makes it
something
better.
about the non-lapsing account? I know Judy referenced with the audit not yet being complete on the town side. I just want to remind everybody that that non-lapsing account, or what we refer to as Fund 25, was put into the state legislature for basically like a returned earnings or a contingency, just like a business would have. So if a high-cost special education student moves in, or if a boiler goes out, or if there's something unforeseen, that we have the funds able to address those things that need to be addressed and not have to go back to the town for that. It was never meant to use it for everyday items that the district should be funding out of their general fund.
Because you're just going to take your can down the road.
Because if we keep doing that, we're just going to keep finding ourselves in the same exact spot that we're in right now.
My concern with staff reduction, and it's the last thing I would want to happen, but if we're looking at our status quo, which already has to take a lot of reduction, we historically look back at what we've been given for increases. The largest increase we've seen in the past 6 years is 2%.
15 years.
I'm going to go off. The largest increase we've seen is 2%. So realistically, are we going to be looking anywhere close to 6% given to us?
But that's not your decision.
No, I know, but
So I'm saying, if you stand behind fighting for every student in the district from pre-K through 22, and that what we've presented in every question that has been asked, multiple questions, that you've gotten responses that are acceptable to you, and you feel that the 6.6 represents moving the district forward and not backwards, then that's something that you have to decide. Now, we don't know where the number's going to end up, but the first part is the board saying to the superintendent, this is the number I want to move forward with, because I think it best represents our mission, everything that we value, things that we've worked hard for to put in place, and we go from there.
Has a board, I don't think, at least since I've been here, but has a board ever said, no, we need to go through less, or have it always just been pushed through whatever was presented to
What's not, I don't want to say push through, you have an opportunity to ask any question.
Maybe push through isn't the right
No, but any question, if there's something that, you can meet again next week, on Wednesday, you can meet next Wednesday before the Thursday meeting. If you feel that there's enough questions that you haven't had answered through the last two batches, and then we can come together. But it sounds like we're going towards the status quo, unless you direct us to say, we don't want to be at 6.1, we want to be lower. Then we're going to have to go back in the next week and say, okay, we need to come up with X amount of dollars for the board-approved number that you're going to bring forward. And we're going to have to sit and say, here's how we did it. But we're getting to a point where I hope everyone understands it's personnel and programs. No matter what we do and how we get down to, people are going to be affected by this. I don't want to give anyone a false, perspective. This is where we're at. 6 carries us. Going backwards, it's going to be programmatic things that we're doing, shared resources within buildings. There's going to be people involved with cuts. That's the reality.
I'd like to know what board members are thinking. Last year, I was a little caught off guard when we had no votes, but I didn't have any indication of what people were thinking to give that vote. And everyone's entitled to their vote, so please, I'm not being judgmental. But I'd like to know, I've given my opinion that I think that moving forward with the 6 would be reasonable at this point. For a few reasons, that I've given many of them. But I'm curious to know what other people are where you are right now, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable to share.
I'm comfortable enough to say I'm comfortable with status quo. We were elected to support the school and the students and make sure they have what they need. And, you know, town council has a hard job to do. I don't want to do their job.
No, me either.
You know what I mean? They have a hard job to do, and they have decisions to make. And, you know, hopefully they're fair to all departments and, you know, whatever the case may be. But if I say anything less than 6.16, but I'm not.
We're not advocating. Is that what you're
Advocating for
saying?
our students, yeah.
I'm going to add to what you said. I think we are here to provide the best education we can within our means. So I'm going to add that little caveat. We, within our means, and that's important. We have to keep North Branford affordable, in my opinion. We're all taxpayers, so we have to keep North Branford desirable yet affordable. That's what makes our town also desirable. I mean, I have to say, to be honest, I wasn't thinking status quo, I was thinking less. But as I'm looking at the cuts, I mean, I want those buses, those late buses. I think sitting in a desk for 6 hours is not enough. It's not the full education. I think being involved in extracurriculars, sports, teaches kids things that you cannot teach in the classroom. So I think that's incredibly important that kids have the opportunity to take part in extracurriculars. I think it, you know, they build a community when they're on a team or in a club. So I think that's super important. So I want those, at least one bus back. So, that's where I am at. I think it would be nice if we had one more meeting. We didn't have the discussions at our first workshop that we took part in tonight. I would like to see one more meeting, and I also would like to have a caucus with my party, our
Oh, that's
party.
up to you. You don't have to ask for that. But so for the board, if you want to have another meeting, the only time obviously before our next board meeting is Wednesday night. We're off on Monday and Tuesday. So it would have to be.
Well, how does everybody else feel though? Marjorie may be the
No,
only one that feels that way.
I'm saying if that's what you want to do, just so you can plan for it, that Wednesday night of next week would be the time. And if you could get your questions, if there's questions, because obviously next week's the holiday, the administrators are not here on Tuesday, so.
I will not be able to be here next Wednesday.
Okay, and Zach is not going to be here next Wednesday.
I'm looking at, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
For capital improvement, tonight, if we were to say that would not be included into this, correct?
No,
Because
capital
it's
is
not
a whole separate, right.
So,
But the town is going to pick the capital projects that they want to fund.
But
in the next several months, we can prioritize them, and then they're going to pick and choose, as you see, like, you know, some have been on it for years. So whatever they feel that they can handle that's of value to the town and to the school, then that has to be done.
I've always said to put the capital through as is and like not have us pick and choose because
We can't do that without a price tag on two
we have
items.
2 weeks to get the rest of the prices.
Yeah, the sidewalk one. We can take the turf fields off, because that's going to be a permanent project. Let them.
Right, but
Yeah,
I'm
1 and
just
2 are-
saying they have
Question.
veto,
Or one.
line by line veto on those. They can pick and
Right.
choose. And I'd hate to say, well, this isn't important and this isn't important. And they say, oh, well, you should have put that on because we would have done that one, you know?
I would like to see them prioritized.
I say this every year that they should be prioritized.
Absolutely.
So we can prioritize them by
Because then that's,
Friday.
we can present
This
that.
is not, I can tell you right up front, the paving piece and for safety, we have potholes with cones around them.
Sounds like a priority.
Well, I think, if we couple with Franny, when he's doing paving jobs and getting, you know, state bids, and we include that and we do it smart, we can do that. Paving's gonna be, you know, high on that. And I can sit with John tomorrow with the administrators and we can put it out and say realistically, you know, if you had to pick, we know, we have history here, what we're gonna get, what we're not gonna get. You know, what John mentioned before, we got the refrigerators done and the freezer done next door. The heating and cooling units will be done over here. So we made progress. We have a new gym floor. So maybe we look at the air conditioning and climate control in a gym where we just spent $315,000 to replace the floor.
We want to protect that
would be a high
investment.
priority, right. So I can do that tomorrow and get that to you. The question that I have for you is, moving forward, knowing from the cut point of the status quo going back, what are the questions that we then can, work on, knowing that we're not going to be here?
This is one of our biggest decisions as a board member, and now we're going to schedule a meeting when 2 members can't attend.
I didn't hear that. I didn't know it.
Okay, so there would only be 5 of us.
Still gonna have a quorum.
Still have a quorum, but this is the biggest decision we make, and you're scheduling a meeting when 2 people cannot attend.
You want to meet tomorrow night? Friday night?
Yeah, you're gonna have a Valentine's party.
Listen, I'm not the popular guy right now, but I'm just saying,
Well, I guess my question would be, what would be the reason,
Okay, so are we allowed to go have a caucus right now?
while we wait? No.
No.
Not while we sit
No,
and wait.
because it's a meeting, that's a caucus.
This is a public meeting
It's a
after.
meeting, this is-
So I guess my question would be, do we have more questions that need to be answered in a meeting? Or is this going to be something we're going to go home, look over everything that we have, and make our decision as to whether we feel the number is appropriate or not? So I guess I don't want everyone to have to come out for another night if we really don't, like, everyone's here tonight ready to answer our questions, and thank you to those of you who have, but
Well, we can vote
do
on
we have
our
more?
next board meeting.
Correct. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying, if we need another meeting, that there's a million questions that we still need to ask, then we need another meeting. If there aren't actual questions and it's just a matter of grappling with our own, where do we think that we should go, then I don't think we need a meeting, we'll just vote at our next board meeting. So that's what I'm asking.
So we're scheduled for next Thursday night.
We can vote next Thursday at the regular scheduled
So-
board meeting. We don't have to vote tonight.
Right, so my request will be if you do have additional questions, because these take time. As you look into the answers to the questions, you'll see, and I put specifically for a reason, legal counsel with Rebecca's name next to it, with statutory things. I put DATCO bus service management for having to provide transportation with a distance from a school, about school choice and being a neighboring town of New Haven, Bridgewater, Waterbury, our responsibilities as school choice. So it's not just my team here. We reach out to multiple resources to do this, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time. This has been a timely task. And just be sensitive to that. If you do have questions, if we can get them by Friday, knowing we're off Monday, Tuesday, so when we come back, we have them prepared for Thursday, so you can vote on it.
So we're not all going to be here Thursday either.
Oh, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Right.
Zach is not going to be here.
So I
We're going to
think,
be here?
I will be here, but I'm gonna be late.
so I mean, it might be better just to do this, and you know what.
I know what I would,
stand,
yes,
right?
yes. But I don't want
know
anybody
what
to
you stand.
feel pushed into a vote that
I
you're
know,
not
Marcy
prepared
said,
for.
you know where you stand. I mean, I look at things a little bit differently, I think, because I think about, when I think of grants, I almost feel like it's borrowed money, and it's like a little carrot, and that makes me a little bit nervous, you know what I mean? So that's how my brain operates. So I get nervous off of saying, okay, everything's gonna be fine, because then I think about from, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from, like, what does that look like, and what does that do to our budget, right? And then, understanding with what Marcy and Marjorie were just saying, I also feel that our responsibility is also to the taxpayer also, as much as we absolutely have to support the school, and that's what I think collectively we're all here for. But there's a little bit of a fine line, right?
Well, the council's going to determine that number. Whatever we come forward with, if we came forward with 8%, 6%, the council is going to look to you. We're going to present to them, and then they're going to say, this is what you're getting.
Right.
So it really, as much as you're putting into and you're a part of, the council is going to give us back the number that we're going to have to stay within. And then we're going to have to do the real hard work. So as much as this number right now, you know that the only way it goes through is if the council approves it.
And do you think that the council's going to approve what we put forward?
I don't know what you put forward.
The six, so say the status quo, if we went with that. Because
So, no, I mean, Vicky just read a statement about the last 5 years. I mean, maybe the town comes out and they're gonna bang on the drums and say, wait a minute. You know, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do know it's the council who's gonna make the decision.
Right.
And your role as a board member is to bring the budget forward with the number that you think represents every student in the district. And every,
Right, absolutely.
and taxpayer. But the taxpayer is gonna come out and vote, don't forget. So they're gonna have the
They get their
ultimate
voice.
say. The taxpayer has the ultimate say. After the council gives us a number.
Right.
So it comes down to the taxpayer. That's the beauty of the vote. And we have to come up and do with whatever number we're eventually given. We have to work within that number.
Right.
Right? So not that it doesn't matter right now, but what you're saying is, I support what's been brought forward. I've had an opportunity to ask multiple questions and have gotten answers. And now, does it represent the ideals of our mission and what we stand for as a district?
And this is what we have right now. If we come in with anything less, it's getting cut. You want to add something back on, we're gonna have to cut if we come in with anything less than 6.16 before our next meeting.
Right.
No, if it stays at 6.16, I'm gonna cut 36,000 somewhere else to get the buses back.
Right, but I'm saying if we come in at 5% or 4%, you're gonna have to go back and make cuts right now.
$400,000.
Right.
You have to say, so to answer Judy's question from before, I'm personally not comfortable with 6%. I think we're prolonging the inevitable. I think we'll get back in town council significantly less than 6%, and we'll be right back here in a couple weeks.
Well, the number that we go forward with, we're not going to debate this until we go to the council in the spring. So it doesn't matter what number you put forward, whatever they ultimately do at those budget hearings in the spring, we're going to have to reconvene and come back.
Yes.
So I think you're sending a message that the value of education and what the administrative team has put forward represents the best interests for the taxpayers, for property value, for those who, someone paid for my children, somebody paid for your children. We inherit that responsibility as a taxpayer. You drive by that beautiful high school and you look at the $10 million renovation to the NDIS roof, and we've spent a lot of money in education. That's what we've done. We've provided our students opportunities. We've invested in their future. That's your job. That is your job. Ultimately, you're not going to pick the number that the town is going to. You're not going to. The council is going to do that. You're saying that you respect the work and the effort and the number coming forward, and it matches all these surrounding towns. It's not like everyone else is 2% and we're 6%. We're all in the same thing together.
Yeah, but the other towns don't mean anything because we're not them. So I look at it,
it's just, but we do compare.
Like financial stuff, so we're compared to them when you look at who can afford what supposedly. I mean, some of the towns are questionable, like Hampton. Why are they with us? You know what I mean? But, so when you look at that and you see those numbers that I said, many of those towns are comparable to us in their budget size, or they have a bigger budget, but they have people with the same economic status in their town. So that was the only reason I brought those up, to say that we are kind of comparable with people who are similar to us.
Got it.
And everyone's battling the same thing. We're all in the same position.
And I respect everybody because, all the questions that we asked, everybody's been extremely helpful. So it's been awesome. I just think that, like Vicki said, I think we're kind of pushing it, kicking the ball down a little bit. And I think the way I look at it is it represents something a little bit more realistic and reasonable, knowing that we're going to get cut. We might get a little bit. Like I feel like instead of saying, hey, I want everything, we just that kind of.
We're not asking for everything. I think the part I struggle with is that we're asking for a flat line.
Right.
There's no new programs. There's going to be no new teachers.
Right.
So I don't, as a board, your responsibility is to build a budget that supports the children in the school system. If it doesn't get supported because of the fiscal healthiness of the town, the council has to determine that. What you're delivering is you're saying this is an honest budget, a good budget that represents all of the students.
But ultimately, and you point this out to us often, like, we are responsible.
It's our budget.
For the budget, right? And it could come back to us. So I take that very seriously.
The number, you're not.
You know what I mean?
Meaning
I take
the
that-
final number, the council's going to
Right. But I take that seriously. That's why I think we should think about that. I mean, it's a serious number. It's a big.
So are you feeling
It's a big number.
you would want another meeting, another workshop?
I mean, a workshop is only going to be effective if you're going to have more questions. If we're going to sit here and debate the same thing.
Honestly, I feel that I don't have any more questions. I've asked what I have. I think everybody has been great. I think I'm comfortable.
That we need to rip off the Band-Aid and just do it.
Correct. That's how I feel. I don't know how everybody else.
Beth, what about you? You haven't said much.
You're calling me out. You're calling me out.
Much?
You said it about the building.
What do you think?
Just a rip off the Band-Aid.
Oh, she did? Okay.
I have a clarification question. Let's, or maybe, if and if cuts need to be made further, whether it happens down the line or not, how does the board, can we get involved in that cut decision? Or how does that, do you give us like, here's a list and we have to approve that? Or do we get to say with you, work with you in that
We would come
process?
back to you and say we had to cut $300,000. The administrative team goes back and says, okay, let's look at programmatically what we have, personnel. Is there any way that if through a retirement or through another situation, no one knows the needs and
Totally
all of that.
understood, yeah.
So then they would come back to you. Last year we cut the greeters. A coach left that we didn't fill. So, that would be the same situation, that we would come back to you and say, we did everything we could to keep as many teachers as we can in the trenches in front of students. And this is how we did it.
I mean,
And then we would, because nobody knows.
I don't remember voting on that.
Yeah, well,
Do we vote on that?
As leaders,
Okay,
all of that.
okay.
You have to vote.
I can't recall.
Yeah, so nothing has changed, but it's just the administrative team are the experts.
Copy that.
That they know every nuance of their building, every need, everything, programmatically that we work towards.
And everything is on the table,
Yeah.
not just staff. I'm just going to say it one more time.
Right. But unfortunately, staff is going to be impacted because of
And I
the
understand that,
degree
but what I would not want to see would be to come back with only staff cuts and no program cuts. Like that would would say we don't value that part of education as much as another. So I think it has to be, and my plea to the admin team would be to do that, to look at everything
best interest of
before you go right to staff. That's just the.
You fought to put a bus back in tonight.
We did.
Because it's going to
Thank you,
impact
FBI.
children. So they're in the same seat. They're going to do everything in their power to be creative. But knowing that we only get to a certain point where we have to have contractual obligations
And I
for
get that,
7 different
believe me.
units for
Yes.
transportation, healthcare. I can't
Everything,
dictate healthcare for. So that part we'll come back to you with, and we're going to have to come back. This is the very first part. This is, I'm trying to be sensitive here. This is the very first part to what is going to have to be much deeper conversations in the future.
That's why I think.
So Judy, you're comfortable at the 6%, at the status quo? Just, I'm going to recap.
Yes.
Okay. And then Victoria, you said you're not comfortable with 6%. Where are you comfortable?
I think around 4%.
Okay. So, Zach, can we go around and talk about comfort?
Do we do that in a vote or a motion?
Well, I think she's just.
I'm trying to build a little
We're getting a sense if we need another
You want
meeting.
to, yeah.
consensus, see where we are, what the difference between.
I said, I mean, my math came out to, forgive me. Math came into like, say, 4.7, 4.5%.
And you're comfortable with 6%? Yeah, I'm somewhere around 4 to 5. Elizabeth?
I kind of agree with Scott in that if you present them with a 4.7% increase, they're going to make you go down to 2%. They're going to take away. And it's their choice. We present, but it's their choice in the end. And you're still going to have to reduce more. And I would be leery of putting forth a 4-point-something% and then have them drop it down to 3.0.
So are you comfortable at 6?
I'm comfortable voting with 6.
I'm more around the 4, 4, 5.
And we have 6, so we have between 4 and 6.
Well, I will say I'm comfortable going forward with the 6. We will not end up with 6.
Okay.
So, I think that every year there's this, I guess I'd say philosophical, struggle in, do you cut before you go, or do you say this is what we really need? But ultimately, whatever we come with, the town council will make the decision what our allotment will be. And that's why I'm comfortable. Do you know what I mean? Because we could go in at 4, but again, it could still be, a little bit less. So I'm comfortable because of the process.
Right.
And I'd rather, personally, I'd rather know that number before we start cutting things. Because I think I would look at something a little differently if I have to cut to 2%, not me, if we have to cut to 2%, or if we have to cut to 4% or whatever. Right now, no one knows what the evaluation is. The grant list won't be available until the town council meeting this month. We're shooting blind. So I wouldn't want to go too low and then regret that.
Okay. So
That's where I am. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to.
Can I hear a motion for a status quo budget?
I will make a motion to put forth a 6.16% status quo budget to the town council.
Is there there's a second? Okay, so we're going to vote, we're going to roll call vote, please.
Chairman Bonadio?
Yes.
Vice Chair Nafrio?
Yes.
Secretary Sienna?
Yes.
Judy Bannon?
Yes.
Zachary Canada?
Yes.
Kim Dawson?
With a 6.16.
Status quo.
So contractual. Victoria Lanza?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, we're not done.
Public comments.
No, we're not.
No, I'm saying, there you go on that one.
But may I just want, I know I'm talking way too much tonight, but I want to just share my appreciation with everyone because, as I may have shared, I ask a million questions, and it's really to understand, and I really feel that this board, this group of people, are working in a way to educate ourselves so that we really understand what we're asking for. And I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate the way that we were able to, ask so many questions and understand that it's not out of a lack of trust or a lack of respect, that it's really to learn so that we can continue to move forward to advocate for what we'd like to see happening in Norfolk.
There were a lot of questions that came through, so thank you.
And many of them might have been.
And enjoy those 2 days off.
Okay, very well said, Judy. I second everything that you said, and I want to thank our staff that come to all of our meetings and put up with us. I mean, I've never seen that kind of support in all my years in politics. So I thank everyone out there who come and listen to us every month and put up with hours of questions and going over and over, but I'm just learning. I'm new. This is my first year, so I appreciate really all the support and all the help from the staff that have put together all these questions and the work that's gone into it. So now we are at the public comment section. Is there anyone who'd like to come up and speak to the board? Anyone? Please come up and speak to the board.
Rose Angeloni, liaison, town council liaison to the Board of Education. I know that you have some very hard decisions. I've been on that side, and now I'm on the other side. And you've had great discussion. I've been here through it. You have some very difficult decisions to make. And just to put it in perspective, I know you talked about the grand list and everything else. The reason it's so much more difficult this year is because we did go through reevaluation. And we will get those numbers, and that's our starting point for the budget year. Because the grand list basically dictates to us how much money we need to raise through taxes, and grand list is our basis for that. In past years, when we don't have reval, we can kind of estimate because we have the history. It goes up 0.5%, 1%, 2%, so we kind of know. This is very unusual because reval really hit a lot of people. A state average has been at least 30% increase on the assessments. So we have absolutely no idea what that looks like right now. And unfortunately, the Board of Ed is the first budget that we receive from any of our departments. We don't have any other department yet at this point in time. And yes, you are correct. You know, we all know in every town, boards of eds are in the 65% of a town's budget. It is a major expense. And so I commend you for all of the work that you have done on this budget. And I know you are in a very difficult situation. And so I just wanted to kind of let you know where we're at and why we really could not. I mean, I was asked several times about where do you think we'll be at? We have no idea at this point because we're still waiting for those numbers, and we will get those on Tuesday night. And that's really the start of our situation. So I commend you for what you have done. And I know there's a lot of difficult decisions ahead for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your input and support.
This is my first time, and I apologize. I work in the trenches, so I have the germs. I've been fighting them. My name is Courtney Grimes. I am a resident of North Branford. I have 3 children well, 2 in district, 1 outplaced of district, 3 are IEP children. So, as an IEP mom, special needs mom, that budget and that support is very important. Having those paras, having those one-on-ones who are trained and know how to handle escalations are very important. And if we're not paying them what surrounding towns are paying them, you're not going to get them in this district. And I think that's a big thing to keep in mind when you are doing the budget and approving anything, because we need people who have seasoned, who know how to handle behaviors and know how to de-escalate those behaviors, not just for my children, but the increasing numbers we are seeing on a daily basis. So when you are thinking about budgeting or outplacing paras because you can't get them in district because you're not paying them well enough, it's something to keep in mind in bottom line budget. It might be easier to pay a para $17 instead of the $16 they're starting at now, and then outsourcing them. So when you're looking at those numbers, maybe we should reevaluate how we are hiring the support that teachers are requiring on a moment-to-moment basis is in the classroom. That's my spiel.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to provide public input? I do have a letter that was sent to me that I was going to read into the minutes for public input, but please, anyone come up to have your voice heard? Anybody? Going once? Going twice?
I will say, I've already addressed it.
That's fine. Hello.
Hi again.
I'm Melina Proto. I live at 124 Parsonage Hill Road. So the only question that I really have is, how is transportation impacting the cost of pre-K if the general transportation is they already have their routes, everything, it's already occurring. So I'm just curious how there's an additional cost for transportation for specifically pre-K.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so will you ask that question in an email? Who would Sarah, would you be the proper person to receive that? Okay.
I mean, would it come from you or go from the board?
Scott. and
It should go
It can come to me and I'll
superintendent.
redirect it.
And then direct it?
Yes, to direct it to whoever.
Okay.
Who should be the
So
one.
if you send it to
Okay.
me, I'll redirect to Sarah.
Okay, so you can get those
She'll see.
questions answered. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Anybody else?
Was it now?
I did, but how to do it? I got it back. Okay. This is from Brittany Crocker. She is she said she planned to come to the meeting tonight. She's got a bad case of bronchitis. Good evening, members of the Board of Education and fellow community members. My name is Brittany Crocker. I live at 1 Lucia Lane in Northford with my husband and 3 young children. My husband and I are new residents who eagerly spent the last few years envisioning and building a life for our family here in town. While I'm very happy to be here, tonight I come to you as a concerned parent to strongly oppose the proposed sliding scale tuition with no cap for the public pre-K-4 program. I would like to preface this by saying this is absolutely not a matter of concern of the program no longer being free. However, it is of utmost concern that this tuition has no cap. My husband and I paid for our oldest son to go to private school for all of his pre-K3, pre-K4, and kindergarten schooling, so I want to be very clear that I am also not questioning the worth of the program or the benefits that come with paying tuition for all of our children in early childhood education. However, what has been proposed thus far for many families could be substantially higher than any private program we have thus far been a part of or have heard of in surrounding towns. Implementing this high percentage charge based on household income will place an unfair financial burden on families, especially young families such as mine, who move to North Branford seeking a great, accessible education for their children. A little bit longer. Proposal is concerning for several reasons: significant financial strain on young families. We are in our early stages of our careers, balancing mortgages, student loans, and child care costs. A high percentage of tuition based on income without a cap could create an overwhelming financial burden, forcing difficult decisions between early education and essential household needs. Unequal access to public education. Public education should provide equal opportunities for all children, regardless of household income. A sliding scale tuition with no cap disproportionately impacts middle-income families and those with multiple young children, making pre-K4 inaccessible for many who would otherwise benefit from it. Also, a negative impact on the community and future enrollment. High pre-K costs could discourage new families from moving to North Branford, affecting the town's growth, economy, and school enrollment. Additionally, lower participation in early education could widen achievement gaps in the future, ultimately hurting students and the district. Rather than placing this burden on families, I urge the board to explore fairer funding solutions, whether through the state support or more reasonable, fair, capped, or flat fee, as previously mentioned. North Branford should be investing in all its children with households of all income. I hope the board will consider this proposal and prioritize a solution that supports all families fairly in our community. We chose to move to this town to do what's right for our families. Please choose what's right for us too. Thank you for your time. So I will email, should I email you this so that you can include that in the minutes, or?
Do you want it attached to the minutes, or usually she just
summarizes? Okay, all right. Sounds good. So I think that ends the public input portion of our meeting.
We have our board meeting next Thursday night.
We have a board meeting next Thursday night. That is the...
We have one more.
Oh, please come up. I'm sorry. You needed a little more urging.
I shared my thoughts last week, so I was like, oh, really? I had the same sentiments as last week. However, my name is Sarah Seward-Scheifel. I reside at 34 Meadowlark Lane. I certainly appreciate all the work you have done. This is a super eye-opening experience, as last week was the first meeting I ever attended. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. 3 young children, one who's in kindergarten and one is in the pre-K program, the pre-K4, who has a post-September birthday, so requires the additional year. I do have the same thoughts as shared through the letter that was just read, as well as what I shared last week regarding the cap. The questions I do still have are also, as Melina mentioned, regarding how does transportation impact the cost. But also regarding the cap, I think there was some
Something mentions are around the fact that we wouldn't really know where caps could go or what anything looks like as far as payments until after Smart Start is or isn't available to us, which sounds like that's June or July. So when would this proposed schedule of payments or proposed amount be available to families who are going to be required to pay it? Is sort of, I think, the next question I have. And I just, again, want to share my thoughts that I do think a cap would be helpful for a lot of families on any end of the spectrum.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. We don't usually do it back and forth, but
Yeah, they can have a question.
And that was going to be my thought, is if I had some questions, should I just email them to you? Okay,
Well, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, are we ready?
There's nobody else, we're adjourned.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, really. Just, I'm so grateful.
You're leaving.